Hi! Every cloud has a silver lining. My story, your questions, my answers. Grab yourself a coffee and come and join me. Hi, my name's Christine Conroy. Welcome to Happy Stuff and Fluff, a channel for women over 50 who are getting happy and growing younger. If you've just landed here for the first time, welcome. But I do think you need to watch my story parts 1 and 2 before you watch this video, if you're going to make any sense at all of the content in this video. So do that and then come back and join us. So your questions about the Twilight Zone is what I want to talk about today. I wasn't quite sure actually about how to approach it. I didn't just want to do question 1, answer question 2, and in actual fact, most of your questions were either the same or very similar. So I'm just going to talk, apart from 1 or 2 absolute direct questions, and I think by doing that I'll answer most of the things you wanted to know. Obviously, if I don't, then just let me know, and I'll get back to you. Okay, so first of all, around guilt, many of you, in fact, said that listening to my story made you feel guilty. Guilty that by comparison you feel that you have nothing to be unhappy about, and yet here you are feeling unhappy about things. Okay, well, first of all, I've said that word guilt now, and I'll be saying it again when I do a video on it. But after that, we will not be talking about guilt on Happy Stuff and Fluff. It is not a word we're going to recognise after that. Okay, so let me just address this and let's look at it rationally. My suffering, or anybody else's suffering for that matter, does not take away your pain or diminish your situation. As I said when I was talking about it, everybody's problems and feelings, so your problems and feelings are relative to you and they are real. What I'm going through is not going to change that for you. But I do think that on hearing stories such as mine, well, like for example, when Charlotte, who had, if you remember, had a sarcoma, an osteosarcoma, which was a bone cancer in her arm. So we found ourselves in lots of children's hospitals and met other parents of children who were dealing with a lot worse than we were. Now, I think what might help to take your pain away or help with your situation is taking from stories like mine. And this is the reason I told you, one of the reasons I told you the story, is to help you to make the decision or take the inspiration from that story that, right, okay, so if that person can get through that and come out the other side, then surely I can get through my situation too. And then you decide, once that decision's made, right, what do I need to do? You take steps, and then that helps you to come through your situation. So to use my stories and others like it as a kind of springboard, if you will, it's what you do with that that's going to ease your pain and help your particular situation. And as I say, that's one of the reasons I tell the story at all. The second reason is because I want you to know that when I talk about happiness, it isn't because I've kind of floated through life easily and I come from a place of charmed existence and that's why I can talk about happiness. It's quite the opposite, in fact. That I've been through something raw and painful and tragic and survived, basically. And not only have I survived, but I'm in better shape than I was in many ways. And that kind of leads me on to another question. It's something I said, I don't think it was during a video, the My Story video, but it actually said, I'm one of the twice born. Of course, the question that's come in is, what's the twice born? Okay, so it comes from the American philosopher and psychologist William James, I think considered to be one of the fathers of modern day psychology. And he said, well, he calls the people who experience newfound happiness through tragedy the twice born. And a characteristic of the twice born is that they use negative circumstances or change or adversity that happens in their outer lives to make the more difficult changes within. These inward changes then enable the person to go on to live a more genuine and fulfilling life. And he says a sort of rebirth happens, or rebirth occurs. And to an extent, to a large extent, I agree with that. And of course, today there's lots of research now, certainly in positive psychology, into what they're calling post-traumatic growth. Now, you'll have your own stories. I've said this before, and I'd love to hear them because I'm interested in it too. Just a quotation from Marianne Williamson, who so eloquently says, "Something very beautiful happens to people when their world has fallen apart." I know what you're thinking. Something very beautiful happens to people when their world has fallen apart. Humility, a nobility, a higher intelligence emerges at just the point when our knees hit the floor. I'm not so sure about the nobility bit, but certainly the humility part and the higher intelligence, or the helping hand of God. Whatever you consider God to be, I've heard that said, I've heard it described in that way. But you know, a crisis or tragedy of any kind, by its very nature, is unexpected and horrendous and out of your experience. Usually it's something you've never experienced before. So you're thrown into this total state of flux, and it very quickly becomes apparent that your usual way of dealing with things ain't gonna work here. And so, you know, the fear of that and the feeling of being out of control is quite overwhelming. And your knees do hit the floor in desperation. You know, mine did more than once. And that is when your higher intelligence emerges and you start to discover strengths you didn't know you had. Except that you will know that you have them because you'll have been developing them to help in just such situations. As I said, that's what the Happy Stuff and Fluff is all about. And you do start to think and behave differently. You have to open yourself up to that, however, and let it happen. Now, I've written a blog in, I think it was Conroy Concepts, I'll leave the link below, about the twice born, but it's really interesting, you know, I'm sure you'll find it interesting. Okay, so a question that you asked, because I think it caused confusion, was pretty much, was it actually Hodgkin's lymphoma that my sister died from? Because, as one of you actually said, there's two Hodgkin's lymphoma. There's Hodgkin's lymphoma and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it's the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that's the nasty one of the two. And Hodgkin's lymphoma, you know, I'm not even sure they categorise it as a cancer anymore because the cure rate of it is so high. I think it's something like 95% of people are cured from it. So my sister, she had Hodgkin's lymphoma. I think she was about 25, and she went through chemotherapy and the treatments and so on, and then she went into remission for a few years, and then unfortunately got it a second time. So she was treated again and she got through that, and she went a good few years then clear of cancer, but it came back, and it came back as stage 4 breast cancer, which then metastasised into her lungs and eventually that's what she died from. So strictly speaking, her story with cancer, if you like, started with Hodgkin's lymphoma at the age of 25 and kind of went on from there. Now, saying it all like that makes it sound like her life was, horrible 24/7 from being 25 to being 46. It's not true. It's not true. She did have a life without cancer. She was a very vital person. She was a detective in the local police for a while, and she had had a great sense of humour. Life wasn't horrible and tortuous for her all the time. Obviously, it was bad when it happened, but in between times, she was quite amazing and dealt with it, as I said, in Silver Linings with such grace and humour. So that was that. And you asked, how did I cope with the stress during the Twilight Zone? Well, I used everything and anything in my toolbox at the time to help, from going to the cinema on my own in the afternoons, which was, I guess, a kind of distraction therapy, to right through to actually going for counselling. I'll tell you about that in a second. In the main, the things that got me through in terms of stress release were exercise, meditation, exercise, and especially yoga. Yoga's kind of come through all down the years, and I still practice yoga today. But aerobic exercise, I used to work out from 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock every day, 5 days a week at least, so without fail, so people knew not to contact me at those times. If the children came in the room, because I exercised at home, if they came in the room, they joined in. So it was great for them. And I have to say, it set them on a road to a lifetime, if you like, of exercise. They all keep fit. And meditation, which I kind of played around with, I say, for a long time. And it's only in the last 10 years or so that I actually started to take it more seriously. And so those things helped me tremendously. And a lot of the things that I talk about in the book from other people. The counselling, in fact, didn't work for me. Now, please don't take me as an example, because I know I didn't give it a chance. The problem I had was I felt much, much worse coming out when I used to go to the counsellor than I did going in. I only went 3 times. My daughter's oncologist was a professor who was brilliant with us. I can't tell you, this guy was amazing. And he said, why don't you go and talk to our counsellor, which I did. But as I say, I felt worse coming out. Now, I know that's something that happens to begin with. But I would drive home from seeing the counsellor, and I used to go to a local beauty spot before I went home, and I had to sit there for half an hour and compose myself before I went home. I was dealing with an awful lot, and I felt I couldn't deal with those things if I was an emotional wreck, shall we say, which I was each time I came out of counselling. So I went back the 3rd time and said to myself, if I feel as bad when I come out this time, I'm not going again. And I did feel so bad, and so I didn't go back. Now, as I say, that's probably not the way to approach it, but that's how I felt at the time. So I guess that's it, really. I think I've answered most of the issues that you brought up as a result of those videos, and I'm sure I'll talk about it further as we go along. I just want you to know that the positive psychology exercises that I'm suggesting you do in these videos really will help. They're in your toolkit now. Some of the exercises I know you may not want to do, I've said this before, but please give them a go. Please try them. And it's not just trying them once, it's getting into the habit of using them. Hopefully you never will be brought to your knees in desperation by something. And hopefully neither will I, because now, before it gets to that stage, all of these things that we're going to have in our toolbox are going to come into play, and we're going to deal with things better than we would if we didn't have those things in our toolbox. Okay, so it's a very poignant time to be talking about this actually, because today is my daughter's birthday. She's 30 today. So happy birthday. As you can imagine, we're blessed that she's here and well at 30 and happy. And something else I need to say too. You know, although they keep throwing out this statistic that 1 in 2 of us will have cancer at some point in our lives, or other such things that can be quite worrying, the success rate of curing cancer is also on the rise. And there's research being done all the time. What happened to us happened quite some time ago now, and things have come on leaps and bounds since then. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I said that to you too. So, if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. A few of you said to me that you're not being notified when my videos come out, even though you've hit the bell. I don't know, YouTube, I don't know, something might be happening with YouTube, but just know that I will be doing videos once a week, if not more. So if you haven't heard from me in 4 or 5 days, check back at the Happy Stuff and Fluff channel to see that you've not missed out on anything. Hopefully it will resolve itself and you'll be notified. Okay, well, once again, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to do a video on hygge, actually. I mean, today, I'm just looking now, I think it's a little bit lighter. How the girls who do makeup, the women over 50 do makeup and, you know, come on camera with no makeup on at all. I don't think I'm quite that brave. Just looking, I mean, I don't have a lot on today because I've not been anywhere. I'm in my hygge sweater and pants, and because it's winter and I love it and I love hygge. So I'll talk about that in the next video. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Yes, and remember that on the Happy Stuff and Fluff channel, we are getting happy and growing younger. If I don't see you again before, have a great Halloween, and I'll see you next time.